Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Raising Confident Girls. I'm Melissa Jones, the host and founder of Girls Positivity Club, and I'm so happy you're here today because we are going to get into an episode that is relevant no matter what time of year you're listening to this. But if you're listening to it in real time, most people who are in the United States or North America are either starting a new school year or gearing up for one. So I know that other people in different parts of the country are in different parts of the school year, but regardless of what time period this is something that is very relevant to girls, and that is breaking that imposter syndrome, I'm not good enough myth that comes up a lot for girls and even women. And this is something really common that I want to talk with you about today because if you're growing in any way, this type of thinking can come into play. And so I want to help equip you with your daughter and knowing how to support her through it with the girls in your life, how to support them through it. But before we get into the episode, if you are finding value in this episode or in the show in general, it would mean the absolute world if you would share it with another parent or caregiver of a girl who would like to hear some tips that they could use in their everyday life with the girls in their lives. That would just mean everything, because it's going to allow more people to listen to the show and reach more families and create that ripple effect of positive change. And that is the ultimate compliment. And the goal of this show is to help as many parents of girls or caregivers of girls as possible. So the episode is, like I said, imposter syndrome. And if you don't know what that is, it basically is you basically not feeling good enough in some way. And this comes up a lot with girls. And I think about my own life and growing up and even as an adult. As an adult, I think, okay, anytime I'm growing in a new area, and it's so easy, especially with social media or when you're in a room that's uncomfortable in a good way, like in a growth way. When I go to networking events to spread what we're doing and the mission of our nonprofit, Girls Positivity Club, and talking about those things to people who I view as very successful, very high profile, or, they just are further along in business, since this is a second career for me in doing this nonprofit work, which I love so much. But it also is really easy for me to fall into comparison and I don't feel like I'm good enough to be in this room, or I don't feel like I'm quite there with knowing how to do this, and that. And, I even heard from a mom recently who started a whole new chapter and switched careers and is now going from corporate to a small business owner and a brick and mortar. So, it's a huge change. And she was talking about oh my gosh, I did not realize how much I was going to grow and how uncomfortable this was going to be, but I know it's for good. And so I think the more we can relate to our girls in this way and how this can feel in their lives too, and let us be human with them, it's really, really important because then we can empathize with them and know how they feel. So obviously, they're not going to be in the exact same situations as us, but they're pretty similar. So if you think about, girls and going to school or trying a new hobby or new sport or up leveling in some way, anytime you up level or start something new, it can be really, really easy to look at the people in that room, look at especially the performance level, if it is a sport. I heard from a lot of girls who were up leveling in an activity this year. So either taking more advanced academic classes or starting a new position in their sport on a higher level team, or just doing something that they had never done before, running for class president or a student council position, or trying, a certain just new thing in their life. It can really go in many directions. But I hear from this, from girls about this because there's that little voice inside that can creep in. It's that critic voice that can say, am I good enough to be here? Am I good enough to be on this team? Am I good enough to be in this class? And that's where imposter syndrome comes in and can really hold girls back from reaching their full potential, trying new things, and growing in new ways, because it can feel super uncomfortable. I know for me, we're a new nonprofit. And so I am learning so much all the time. And it can feel challenging. Like there's so much to do. And I just have to remember to just take one step at a time. And so, in whatever case that would be in your life, I'm sure you've had a time where you've been growing in some way, even if it's in the kitchen, trying some new recipes, new techniques, trying to figure out a new schedule, trying something and failing and it not working the way you thought. But you see this other mom or this other parent who seems to have it all together, and they have like the color coded whiteboard schedule, and you tried that and it failed. And you're like, why, did this not work for me? I'm not as good as fill in the blank, whatever case that would be. And so we want to equip our girls with ways to work out of that, because the truth is, this is something, if you're up leveling in your life in some way, you're growing in some way, even as a parent, it can feel very discouraging sometimes when things aren't going perfectly. And, then you can compare and think, am I good enough to fill in the blank? And so with the girls, I even saw this at camp. It was like in cooking, when we were doing our cooking and art camps, it would be like when we make cake pops, like that stands out to me a lot. And I just did a reel on it of just showing the girls like making cake pops. And a lot of their cake pops did not turn out. They were more kind of wet as the cake, they put maybe too much liquid in it, or they put too much of whatever, or the way that it was poured into the molds, or the way it was baked, whatever it would be, didn't turn out the way another groups did. And I would hear them saying, mine or ours aren't as good as that other group. Why does theirs look like this and ours looks like this? Or why is ours falling apart? And they would be like on the verge of tears, because it is upsetting. You work hard on something, you work together like these girls do in teams, and they gain so much. And they learn so much about resilience and to keep going and perseverance. And I say all the time in our clubs and camps, yours doesn't have to look like everyone else's. You don't have to do it exactly like them. You're doing a good job by trying. And so, it could be even, like I said, comparing cake pops and seeing like the outcome of someone else's looks very put together and yours kind of looks like a mess. But what I always say too is sometimes that mess can taste really good when you're cooking, or, you'll learn for the next time, and it may not be in your mind as good as another group's, but you're learning. And a lot of times I would do this a lot as a teacher too. And I do it in clubs and with the girls when I work directly with them. And I know our leaders do too, is like, how many of you have ever done this for the first time? How many of you, this is your very first time making cake pops or doing whatever? And most of the time, it's almost everyone. And it's making them aware that it's okay. Yours doesn't have to be as good as so-and-so's, because maybe they've done it several times and they had the experience of knowing how to form the cake ball differently, or, doing the certain thing because they had experience in another way that related to it. So you are good enough. Yours is good enough, and it will get better. It doesn't have to be a certain way. So, I think about like cooking is one example, in athletics, in gym class, especially for, me, for example, I wasn't the most athletic person, but I tried. And I would a lot of times think to myself, like, I'm not as good as this certain player or this certain girl in this way. She has all these friends and I'm not good enough to be in that friend group, and I'm not good enough to sit at that lunch table, or, all of those limiting beliefs that hold you back. And the truth is, as I've met more people and obviously done a lot of work on my own personal growth, is, and seeing this in girls too, is like, people are people no matter what, no matter if they're popular, they're not popular. Everybody has their strengths and everybody has their areas of challenge. And, some people hide it more than others, especially the ones that seem to be viewed to the girls in that popular crowd. It looks like they have a perfect life, a perfect Instagram feed, whatever it would be. And I think we can all relate to it even as parents. Like, we see what we might view as a perfect parent. And the truth is, we don't know what's going on in anyone's life. And, with the girls too, it's like comparison is such a huge part of imposter syndrome. It's not always the case, but it's a lot of times that comparison of, someone else who's further along in whatever area it would be. And it can also be an ideal that they have in their head about how they should be. Especially, I know that I've seen a lot of girls who expect to be really good at something right away. And then they just think if they're not good at it right away, that they're not good enough in some way to do that thing. So, I would see this in academics, with math, with reading, with writing, especially when we would share stories and writing, and they would be like, my story isn't good enough to publish. I can't finish it. It's not good enough. And it was like, no, it is good. Like, you're learning and this is a process, and we need to represent everybody and everybody's type of story, and it's important no matter what. So don't look at it as your writing isn't good enough, or your drawing isn't good enough if it isn't perfect, things like that. Or like, I've heard of some girls who've told me, especially in middle school, which I think this is so high risk in middle school. In gym class, they would have to perform in front of their peers, and they would like have to create their own yoga routine or their own dance routine with a mix of people that they wouldn't normally work with, and then do it in front of the group, like perform it in front of the group, which at middle school, like, that is like death to them. Because even if they're good at dancing, it's like trying to get everyone coordinated and on the same page of different abilities and different levels. And like, in theory, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to show them how to work with different types of people and try something new, but it's super high stress for them, and it's very public. And if you know anything about, I'm sure you do because you've been at that age, that middle school age, that 11, 12, 13-year-old age, is like, you already feel like everyone's staring at you, and you can feel not good enough, or that imposter syndrome of like, everybody's going to think our routine isn't as good, and, all those things that, or I don't dress as good as other people, or whatever the case may be in the girl's case. And the problem with that is it can paralyze them. It can push them into the background of hiding. A lot of times when I pick my teenager up from high school, I'll see kids walking and they have their hoodies up. And I think to myself, that's how they feel. I mean, it's like and it's not cold outside, so it's warm right now. So I'm like, okay, there's no way they're cold. They're hiding in a way. It's like, that's how that age group wants to feel sometimes, is like they're in their own cocoon, they're in their own cave, and they're in the background. And, even when they're totally capable of doing the same things as other people. So the main problems are, there's a fear of failure, or embarrassment. That is a huge thing. And that's why it's so risky, or you might see high stress whenever your daughter is going to be presenting something in front of a group. Some kids don't care as much, but especially as they get older, they become more self-aware of what other people think of them. And it's helping them manage that in a healthy way, like being secure in themselves and telling themselves like, okay, no matter what other people think, I'm just going to do my best. And it just takes practice and time of doing that. And then that reluctance to try new things. It can cause a problem if they're thinking they're not good enough, of being reluctant to try new things. Like, well, last time I wasn't good at it, so I'm not going to try this time. I'm going to just stand on the sidelines or have my hoodie up or whatever it is. avoiding the challenges or opportunities. So sometimes even this can be in an opportunity like, hey, we'd love for you to try out for the soccer team. We've seen, you've played rec and we know you try really hard. Like, we'd love for you to try out. We'd love for you to go, and maybe all the other girls on the team have already been playing together. This actually happened with my son's girlfriend, and she was telling me about how she was playing rec and, just enjoying it, trying to figure out the sport. She'd never really played before, and she's 15, and she was invited to try out for the school team. They saw potential in her. She's a hard worker. She's very determined. She's athletic and all of those things. And so, we had a conversation just briefly about, these girls, some of them have been playing together for a while, and not knowing how she would do, but she embraced it and tried anyway. And she's on the team now, which is amazing. Um, and, that negative self talk can also be a problem when, you're not feeling good enough. Is like, you can look for all the evidence and all the ways, and you can be that inner critic, that inner villain to yourself of like, you'll never do it. You didn't do it last time. It's that tornado of thinking, like what I tell the girls. It just comes in, and it's, the other word for it is ruminate. You ruminate, you obsess over it, and just replay it over and over, like the mistakes you've made, to prove to yourself that you shouldn't try and that you won't be good enough at it. Um, and then also another problem can be seeking that constant validation from peers, from other girls, and even older kids too, and from parents, like always wanting validation for everything they do. Like, did I do a good job? What did you think of that? And you can usually tell. I would see this as a teacher when a kid would bring me literally their page after every problem they did. Will you check this and see if it's okay? I particularly had a girl one year in fifth grade when I taught fifth grade, and we were writing, and she literally came up to me after every sentence. And I looked at her and I said, I want you to write a little bit more and just trust yourself that you can do this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It is good enough. It's a first draft. Just get it all out, okay? And, very lovingly, I weaned her off of doing that. But she was so dependent on getting approval all the time that I wanted to teach her how to have that self trust and to know that it didn't have to be a certain way to be good enough. That it didn't have to sound like someone else's. It needed to sound like her voice. And yeah, and over time, she got better at that. So these are some typical problems that can come up. And so I always want to give you practical strategies and tools and things that you can do with your daughter and the girls in your life. So here are 4 strategies you can use. And we're going to use the acronym called RISE, because we need to rise above the I'm not good enough type of thinking. And really, it is, I think, a good way to also think of when you don't do that, when you don't, stay in that am I good enough thinking. You do rise above it and you make progress. And that's what we really want for our girls, for sure. So the R in RISE is reflect. So it's encouraging her to be self-aware. And when she's doing this to herself, by helping her see her strengths and past successes. So this is like reframing failures into learning experiences. So they may not want to hear it in the moment, but you either win or you learn. It's an old phrase. I can't remember off the top of my head right now who says it, but might be Les Brown, but don't quote me on that. But it's such a great phrase and a reframe of like, you either win or you learn. There's no fail, really. I mean, it feels like a failure sometimes if you make a mistake, but it's really about teaching them, okay, what did I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And what you can say is, remember that time when you just give her an example of reminding her when she did overcome something, but you did great because you kept going, you kept working at it, and you just remind her of that. So that's something that you can do, is you can say that to her. And then you can also say, what's something, this is raising her self-awareness, what's something that you're proud of that was hard for you, but you worked through it? And you know your daughter, you know the girl in your life you're talking to. I'm sure you can come up with an example if she can't to remind her, but most of the time they can come up with it. So that's the R, and that's how you can help her raise that um, reflection and self awareness. The I is involve. So get her involved in activities that can build her confidence. This is where Girls Positivity Club comes in, and other things as well. But this is really, really important. And what we do is providing that positive space for girls to try new things. And in our camps, especially, and in our clubs, we do fun activities in a safe environment. And it might be an art class, it might be a music class, it might be that she really enjoys being in nature and like learning about animals, and like you figure something out with the parks department. Whatever that would be for your daughter, maybe she wants to explore in nature, with hiking or with whatever it would be, collecting something. So getting her involved in activities, especially with other girls that have similar interests, would be really good. And it can help show her, even a cooking class, or doing that with friends is really going to show her that she can do new things. And my favorite phrase, I know I've said this before, but I always love it when girls say, I can't believe I did that. Because it's such a huge testament to building confidence, because that's what you think, isn't it? Like you do something, you're like, wait a minute, I just did a cartwheel with straight legs, or I just did, whatever it would be, all by myself. Like the first time you do it by yourself and you like look around, like, did anyone see that? And then, you run and tell your mom or whatever it would be. Yeah, so getting her involved in activities that can build her confidence, a hobby, a sport she enjoys, an activity she enjoys, and just reinforcing that skills come with practice. You're not going to be perfect at it right away, and you're not supposed to be. It's okay for you to not be great at something right away, and just doesn't mean that you're not good enough to do it. It just means you need more practice at it. And even though I was never like a super great athlete, I kept trying, and I did improve in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, I focused on too much comparison and me not being good enough to be on the team. But when I was at home and I was making progress, and then sometimes I did have those moments with my teammates where I was like, okay, I did that. And I could see my progress. And of course, my parents reminded me too, which is great. So, yeah, you can reinforce that. And then you can also say to her, like, let's find something you enjoy that you want to get better at, or let's just find something you enjoy to try something new. And it's okay if, it takes a little while to figure it out. You might have to try different types of activities. I know I took a sewing class one time. I raised a rabbit for the 4-H fair. My parents were really great at letting me try lots of different things. And I was just always searching for something that I would be good at. And teaching ended up being something that I really got good at as I got older, and helping people. Yeah. And so that was something that I found out later as I got to do more things, thanks to my parents, encouraging me to try new things. And then the S in Rise is speak positively. So it's that power of positive talk. And I just heard an interview on Lewis Howes' podcast that was by Dr. Price Pritchett. And I loved what he said about this because it relates to speaking positively. So I've said this lots of times, but just in case this is your first time listening, it's never about that toxic positivity where we pretend like everything's perfect. It's about cutting out more negative thinking and replacing it with that positive. And again, it's not ignoring reality. It's not, telling yourself you're the best at everything. It's cutting out that inner villain, inner critic. And Dr. Price Pritchett did research on this, where there's actually lots of studies about how if you cut down your negative talk, it's better than just increasing your positive self-talk. So it's still good to obviously keep doing the positive self-talk. Like, I can do this. I'm getting better every day. I'm making progress. I don't have to be perfect. All of those things help eliminate more negative talk. And the more we model that, remind our girls to do that, the easier it will become over time. And for me, it took so long because my mom didn't have this type of podcast, or she didn't know how to do it. She also struggled with it herself. So, it's just modeling that for her, even if it's not supernatural for you either. And just encouraging her to not necessarily dismiss anything hard, because we never want to be like, oh, it'll all work out. It always works out. I mean, yes, you can say that, but also teaching her to say things to herself like, I can keep going. One problem isn't going to make me terrible at this. I'm going to, ask questions if I need help or whatever that would be. I can do this. Something simple that she can repeat to herself as her own cheerleader. Um, and it's, just saying something like, what's something kind you can say to yourself today if something isn't easy? Just reminding her of that. And then the E in Rise is encourage support. So talk openly with her about how it's okay for her to share with you if she's scared about something, or she feels like she's not as good at something, or she's worried about something. Again, we're not like wanting them to feel this way, but we're also not wanting them to think that they never can express this to us. If she's not worried about anything, she doesn't have to say something she's worried about. But if you can tell something's on her mind, you can say something like, it's okay to talk about your fears. It's okay to talk about things that are hard. Who would you like to talk to about it? Do you want to talk to me? Do you want to talk to your dad? Do you want to talk to a friend? Offering more people to talk to is another really great option, because it might not be you this time. And that can hurt your feelings. Like, I know as a mom, it's hurt my feelings before if I've not been the person that they want to talk to. But we want them to have a variety of people, so they're not only dependent on one person or on you to talk to about anything. There are certain things that they might want to talk to their friends about, because they know their friends can relate. Or they might want to talk to, an auntie or an uncle or whoever, a coach about something, especially if it's related to that activity, or the art teacher, whatever it would be. We just want to have, a mentor of some kind. And I know the girls talk to me in clubs and camps, and it's like, we want them to have as many people in their corner. It's like it takes a village, as possible, who are going to be those positive role models and those people that they can talk to when they need to work through something, or they're feeling not as good as in some way. So, the possible outcomes for this, the positive outcomes of teaching them how to do this reflection, being involved in activities, speaking positively to herself and being her own encourager, and then encouraging her to get support from you, from other people in her life. All of those things are going to build her resilience. They're going to keep building her confidence, and they're going to help her have that self-image that's like, I can get through this. I can figure this out. I don't have to be exactly like someone else to be as good at, because being myself is good enough. And I don't have to be perfect at things. And that's really what we want for our girls, isn't it? Is to teach them how to work through these feelings. Because the truth is, if you're growing, you're going to be around people who are maybe further ahead than you in something, or they've had more experience in something, or maybe they're super talented in this one area and you want to get there in your own way. In thinking about that as your daughter, it's really, really important to teach her these skills as she's growing up, so that she has the tools. That's what Girls Positivity Club is all about, is teaching them while they're growing up, so they don't have to struggle through and not know what to do, and to give you the tools too to support your daughter. So I hope this was helpful. If you have other ideas for things that have worked, or if you need help with a certain area, I would love to hear from you. I get lots of DMs from parents on Instagram, on Facebook, about things that they need support with their daughters. And I would love to hear from you if this podcast is resonating and helping you. I would also just love to hear that, because I don't know who I'm talking to. I hope a lot of, really just, I know that you're amazing parents and people. So I would love to put a name with your face and know that we can do this together. And Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You're doing great, and you are good enough just the way you are, just like your daughter is too. I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.